live in a trailer with rusted pants. Mom's dog's bald, it's got no flair. Lost all its hair, and it don't care. Pink blankets, lies I've told again. Footprints vanish like phantom friends. I'm Superman, Daniel, faster than wind, stronger than a chopper with a rotor spin. I rake my driveway while Mom shakes her fist. Super Daniel, yeah, I can't be missed.
I like this one better, I think.
Out on Mama's ATV. She says I drive it recklessly. X wrote her name on my mirror in red. Now I'm searching cold. It's like I lost my head. Dirt roads, rivers, waist high deep. Virginia slims, I puff and leap. I'm Superman, Daniel, faster than wind, stronger than a chopper when the rotors spin. I rake my driveway while Mom shakes her fist. Super Daniel, yeah, I can't be missed. No, out on Mama's ATV. She says I drive it recklessly. X wrote her name on my mirror in red. Now I'm searching covers like I lost my head. Dirt roads, rivers, waist high deep. Virginia slims, I puff and leap. I'm Superman, Daniel, arrogant and bold, strutting pop lines in the cold. Work one day a week at the sawmill grind. Super Daniel, yeah, I own my time. I'm Superman, Daniel, arrogant and bold, strutting pop lines in the cold. Work one day a week at the sawmill grind. Super Daniel, yeah, I own my time.
Even with me running through the woods over the head of the helicopters and head of the drones and stuff like that.
That's a good one.
Welcome in, everyone. It's good to see people coming in. Thought we'd start with something a little bit lively just to get things going. So I do have still a little bit of the Daniel audio that I would like to go through, but the reason that the title I put for the live stream, the question I've got is, where do we go from here with this case? Because we're seeing decreased in interest. We want to keep Lily and Jack's names out there. We want to keep the pressure on. But we're seeing fewer and fewer content creators putting things out on this case. A lot of the content creators who were flat out with this case are turning around saying there's nothing to say anymore. I've got a list a mile long of videos that I want to be working on, things that kind of not really for live streams because they take a lot of explaining and a lot of fiddly stuff. But I do think people are waiting for the July court case. But the question is, after that, what's going to happen? Are people just going to report on what happens there and then just move on and go on their merry way again? There are people that have said, I'm walking away from this case because of the toxicity and the drama, which that's a shame. I really hope that other content creators do still manage to at least put things out like once a week or something. Just, hey, we're still looking at this case. We haven't forgotten Lily and Jack. It must be difficult right now for Belinda and Chelsea and for the people who truly care to see less talk around it. And I understand. I've been chatting with other content creators behind the scenes, and the level of bullying that is going on is insane. So I can understand people being reluctant to continue covering the case as well in terms of content creators. But, you know, it would be a shame to see this become one of those cases that just gets forgotten. I mean, my advice to other content creators who are being bullied, who are having, malicious things done towards them, is to just stay in your lane, just ignore, don't respond. Because if you don't react, then, these sort of people, they get bored with themselves pretty quickly and they move on to something else. As for walking away from covering the case, yes, understandable. But at the same time, if you're ignoring the BS and just doing your own thing, doing it your own way, then, sooner or later the idiots just move on to something else. It's a shame. It really is a shame. I'm going to keep, obviously, as you can guess, I'm going to keep covering Lily and Jack. Even if it's not necessarily a live stream every day, it might just be video content every day. But I'm determined to make sure that their names are still getting out there every day. I would like to see the other content creators also putting a bit of content out there occasionally. And I know that obviously there's the financial incentives in terms of, if you're doing a live stream and it's not getting a lot of views, whereas you can do Nancy Guthrie, for example, and get, 10 times the views, I can understand that. So I don't begrudge anyone that. But, I went looking for content yesterday and it seems like it's either drama content, fan fiction content, or at the moment, just me. I really would like to see other people still do a little bit of Jack and Lily, but, each to their own. So hopefully this isn't going to be one of those cases that just kind of fizzles out. Like, I mean, Summer's case gets this occasional revival. But even that's kind of, it doesn't have the momentum. Yeah, just Jenny, that's the thing. You've got content creators who are being bullies because they don't want other people to be getting the attention on the case. What they don't realise is that if other content creators move away from covering the case, then the interest in the case dwindles as well, because a lot of the followers of those other content creators will follow the content creator. And then it might become secondary for them to look for Lily and Jack. So I think a lot of what's happening here comes from bullying content creators who want the biggest piece of the pie, and they're bullying other content creators and not realizing that actually that's destroying their own audience, because YouTube's not going to put these out into the algorithm as well. Essentially, if you've got several content creators covering something, then YouTube is going to be like, okay, this is worth putting into the algorithm and recommending to people because there's multiple people covering it. And then also because there is multiple people covering it, there's more views on it. So it gets out into the algorithm. But when people are bullied out of covering the case and you get fewer and fewer people fewer and fewer people covering it, YouTube goes, well, this is old news, so I'm not going to put it into the algorithm. So these idiots that are bullying other content creators to try and stop them covering the case are essentially shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah, exactly. These Karama people don't realise that the people who want justice for children don't have time for the BS. But yeah, I do not understand when content creators bully their followers. I do not understand when they basically, pick and choose what comments can stay. It doesn't do anything for the case. I think Daniel's going to try and push his case back. I honestly think that if there's any way of doing so, that we could see that happen. I think, I don't know, it's a good question because his lawyer came out and said that he would be electing or pleading at the next hearing. But there's still that part of me that thinks, well, is he going to try and push it back? 7th of July. Or if you're in Australia, it'd kind of be 8th of July, really. Although probably still 7th, because I think for us, it would probably land at like 11 o'clock at night or something like that. Thank you so much, Joyous. Very much respected. Very much appreciated. Yes. I like to keep this a drama-free zone. That's not what we're here for. No, not long. I don't think we're going to hear anything from Daniel between now and then, that's for sure. It's going to be very interesting to see where things are headed after the 7th. As for movement in the case, I don't think we'll see any movement in this case for still some time for us from RCMP. I still think that they are going to be waiting just to see where things go in terms of where this case that Daniel's got, where that goes. Here, defence and prosecution get 3 continuances each but can't go over 2 years. Well, that's something I've learnt today. I only learnt the other day that couldn't go over 2 years. But only 3 continuances each. That's cool. I wish that some of the cases here, I wish they'd just hurry up and get a move on. I mean, Phoebe Bishop, it's over a year since the arrest of the people in her case. And Samantha Murphy, I mean, Patrick Stevens, it's ages since he was arrested. just reading this. I think he'll plead not guilty, but I imagine he will sign a plea agreement later on. I wouldn't be surprised. I just really hope that we get some movement with that because it's just frustrating. Also saw someone ask a question up here somewhere. Do I think he'll opt for a jury? I think he would, because I think Daniel believes that he is very good at convincing people of things. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, up until this case, I believe was just quite used to manipulating people. And I think it's been quite a learning experience for him with this because people haven't bought his stories. Yeah, I meant to get some clips for that and I forgot. William Tyrell, sorry, would have been turning 15. That's unbelievable. This is one of Australia's biggest missing children's cases, and we're so used to seeing the face of this little boy as just, you know, a little baby. To think that he should be turning 15. That's incredible. There were other clips that I had that I was going to share at the start of this, but I wasn't really organised enough, as you can probably guess. I do have the, Tyrell. I think, you know, spelling, it's all good. Yes, Daniel has not convinced us. And, you know, maybe because his confidence has been shaken a bit with his inability to convince people on YouTube, maybe he will elect for a bench trial. But he's kind of like the Energizer Bunny. I think he still believes in his own abilities to BS people and be convincing. So I'm still kind of leaning towards electing for a jury, but I could be completely wrong. Yeah, that was definitely a systematic failure with William Tyrell. There's so many cases where children have just been failed by the system. Yeah, not just him, but Janie as well. It's like they thought that if they could convince YouTube of their innocence, that the case would go away. Because there's so many things that they've said on YouTube that there's no way they would have said that to the RCMP, because RCMP would know it was a lie. There's so many times where they've come out with things that can be verified as lies. So it's been all about controlling public perception from day one, which is just ridiculous. I mean, what about Lily and Jack? Can't it be about them? Well, it can't be, because they don't want the focus on Lily and Jack, because then the focus comes back to what happened to Lily and Jack. And then the focus comes back to them in terms of there were only 3 people on that property. So those 3 people must know what happened to Lily and Jack, because it wasn't an abduction and they didn't wander off into the woods. Yeah, I agree. I think for this current case that Daniel's got, and then down the track for Jack and Lily's case, finding a non-biased jury could be a challenge. At least, you know, it'll be in Halifax. So that's a little bit out of Pictou County at least, but still, it's been so widely spoken about. Yes, it's always been about Daniel. He's the victim. He's been hard done by. His whole world is shattered because now he like, you know, he's lost his whole family and it's just him and the hamsters now. He's forgetting that he should be, if he was innocent, advocating for Lily and Jack, but that's not what's been happening. Anyway, I am going to jump in with the last bit of Daniel's conversation with Charmaine. I haven't thought about what I want to cover next in my live streams for Lily and Jack. So any suggestions from people in terms of what you want me to cover when we finish going through this Daniel thing with Charmaine, any suggestions there are good. Because I do want to at least, you know, several mornings a week still do Jack and Lily for live streams. I'm contemplating with the Mackenzie Sharilla case doing 1 or 2 live streams a week on her case because there's so much content there that I want to get through. And I think there's a lot of interviews and things where I think they would lend themselves better to doing live streams than just sitting and just, you know, going through it on my own. So I want to try and get a balance, but I do want to keep doing live streams for Lily and Jack. Welcome in people who are still coming in. Good to see you here. Anyway, just putting that out there for people to think about in terms of what you want to look at next with Lily and Jack. I'm considering going back through media footage, just going back to the beginning of the case, and just going through what the media has said in terms of the solid, cold, hard facts, because things have become so distorted in the last 3-4 months. So that's one thing I'm looking at, basically. But anyway, I'm open to suggestions for that. So let's listen to a little bit more of Daniel's BS, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I want to bring up a thing too about yesterday when I said, you know, the RCMP only wants credible tips. Don't send anything I say online into RCMP because I already send it myself. Every time I go on a live, everything I talk about, I send it to investigators. I sent the link for this live this morning to investigators. Everything I say, I give to them. I don't hide anything. I'm completely honest. So there's no point in ever sending anything I say online because I send it to them. So they know everything I say.
I know that's taking it back a little bit, but I just wanted to go through that bit again because it's just such an arrogant thing. Yeah, no one was buying this whole thing about him being a devoted stepfather, so now it's about poor me with Daniel. No, asking about Shannon, I haven't seen anything of Shannon in quite some time, so I hope she's okay. Because she was unwell last time I saw her around. So fingers crossed she's okay. Okay, there's some comments here that I'm not seeing, but yeah, it would be probably good to go over some of the extras like Logan and Haley and stuff like that. I would like to do some more Maddie Soto. You know, maybe we should start doing a weekly Maddie Soto live stream as well, because I think there's a lot that needs to be said about her case still. And I think people need to be reminded that Jen Soto is not innocent. Because while Jen Soto is still happily living her life, then as far as I'm concerned, Maddie hasn't got justice. So that's a really good idea. I have to figure out some sort of timing or schedule, but it would be good to start doing regular discussions again about Maddie and really, really start looking more closely at Jen Soto again. I think I'd probably have to do a few live streams just really digging into the case for people who are not familiar with the case. But I would like to really, really shine the spotlight back on Jen Soto, because she should not have got away scot-free. I mean, the whole way that case went was just wrong, if you ask me. Completely wrong. I think Daniel is starting to realise that the RCMP are not his pals. But he just loves pushing that whole idea. I wonder how much of that, though, I wonder how much of that was to basically do Malaya's head in. To put this idea out that, hey, look at how buddy-buddy I am with the RCMP. That means they're not looking at me, they're looking at Malaya. It's got to have been not just trying to manipulate the public, but also to make Malaya think, hey, look, I'm convincing them. 100% women's warrior. I don't understand it either. There should be public outrage over Jen Soto. Totally. She is the reason Maddie was upstairs in bed with Stephen Stearns. She essentially treated it like normal behaviour. It's so wrong. Yeah, I will definitely come back and talk about Maddie's case. And I will do a few live streams first for those of you who are not really familiar with the case, so that you can get an understanding of why people are so angry still over the case, and so you can get a feel for it. Angeline told someone that Daniel used to go see her and neither of them would tell Malaya. That's interesting, as in him doing sort of a manipulation thing behind the scenes, or I hadn't heard that. But then I'm very cautious about things like that, because with Scamnita out there making up so many stories, it's hard to even consider anything that I hear these days, but yep. That Woody Allen comment that Jen made, where she said that she was afraid that Stefan and Maddie would basically end up together and she'd be left out, and that's paraphrasing at the worst. That really, really sealed the deal. Yep, Stefan is in one of the most cushy prisons in Florida. He worked that really well. Got himself transferred into what essentially was like a a super Christian kind of prison where they have all these courses for the inmates, and it really does sound super cushy. Sure, he hasn't got his Tamagotchi, but no doubt Deb Stearns is still buying him book after book after book, and he's probably got a cell full of his root beer barrels, and they're buying him his nice meals. Doesn't have to work. I guess it's a pretty good life for Stefan. Yeah, the rights that criminals have are just ridiculous. It's wrong. There's just been too much of a swing towards the rights of criminals when you look at the cost to the victims. Linda, you're so right. Daniel is quite the star. He loves the attention, and welcome in as well. Okay, so here is when we get into some more of the fun BS from Daniel. So I'm going to play a bit more of this.
And
Well,
I
I
don't think
know
a lot
they're
of people will
keeping an
believe me
eye
on that, but I do.
Well, I personally know they're keeping an eye on you because I have spoken with RCMP, and RCMP told me themselves that they have somebody dedicated to watching social media. So
They actually have a whole team. They have a whole social media team that's dedicated to scouring everything online.
Daniel has to blow everything up. So this Melissa has said, they've told me they've got someone who watches social media. And Daniel, because he thinks he's that important, turns us around to, they actually have a whole team. Whole social media team. Seriously. A whole social media team. Does he not realize that in terms of monitoring social media, it's not like they have to sit there and search for content. They have programming that basically brings up any content. So it's not like they have like this little lab full of people sitting on computers all day looking for content. He's got tickets on himself. He's shouting at Beware World. Yeah, he could just be honest about the case, but he won't. He does. He always makes comments on what people believe or think. But he's got to kind of sound like he knows more. And that's all this is. Because he's probably thinking, I wish I'd thought to say that. So, because he wasn't the one who thought of it, he's got to make it sound like he knows more. Hence the comment of they've got a whole team. Because, that they've got to watch out for content. And then we get the whole secret agent thing. Now, I have no doubt that they do watch the Facebook groups, but the way Daniel goes into this is just hilarious, if you ask me.
I've told them many times, you try to get into all these private groups. So all these groups that people have on Facebook, and they're like, oh, like these are, we talk about Lily and Jack in this group. I have investigators trying to infiltrate all those groups. I try to do everything I can for the case. And that comes to being in these chats, being in those groups, and scouring the information, everything they can get. I tell them the group names and see if they can get officers to go in on the inside and talk to them, and try to get any information they can. I've been doing that since the start.
Have you noticed how he's the head of the investigation? He's directing investigators in terms of, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. Yeah, he on one hand is saying he doesn't do social media, and then he's like, I'm in all these groups. But it's like, well, I'm telling them that I have investigators trying to infiltrate all these groups. You've got them trying to do that, have you, Daniel? He doesn't really understand how all that works. They don't need to infiltrate all those groups. They can monitor those groups quite easily. But I'll try to do everything I can for the case. So, if that means getting the detectives to do this for me, because that's what he's conveying here. He's like, this is what I've told them to do, and they're doing it for me. Yeah, when you hear the way he runs with this simple thing of, all she said was that they have someone dedicated to watching social media. And he's run with it and turned it into a big story. And he does it so easily. Hasn't stopped to look at, well, how do I cover this? He's just launched straight in. So yes, you can imagine the level of manipulation with Malaya. Yes. It is lucky for them that they've got Daniel to tell them what to do, because otherwise they wouldn't know what to do. He does like the spy talk. He's got them to infiltrate. Investigators are trying to infiltrate these groups. Because, they're not as smart as Daniel, so they're not as savvy, so they're only trying to infiltrate. Whereas, Daniel could probably just do it automatically. It's just insane. And, he has to tell them the group names so that they can get officers inside and talk to them. So essentially, he's trying to now once again deflect. So what he's trying to give the impression here is Delulu Dan. Yeah. He loves his big words. Infiltrate, weaponize, all these words. Whoops. He calls on his secret Shooth phone. Yeah. Oh, hi Rob. Guess what? I've got another Facebook group for you to go and infiltrate. This is the name of the group. It's I'm just going to comment on Linda's comment on Stefan Stearns, because she's so 100% spot on. Stefan is somewhere where he doesn't need to make decisions. That's perfect life for him. because he's got his parents to buy him his books. He's got his parents to buy him his root barrel lollies, to buy him all his nice meals, to keep putting money in for him. And he's got no obligations anyway whatsoever. Yeah. He's trying to give the impression that they need to watch Facebook groups because the people responsible for what happened to Lily and Jack are hiding out in these Facebook groups. Again, it's deflection. He wants people to not look at him. Welcome in, Summer Breeze. Yeah, he does. He uses the big words and the big comments, but he's got no idea. Utterly clueless. Utterly clueless. But, you know, this whole Facebook story is, again, trying to deflect attention from him. You know, well, if I'm telling them that they need to be looking at all these Facebook groups, then basically that is to show that I'm innocent, because, you know, they wouldn't need to look at Facebook groups if they were looking at me. That's the goal behind what he's saying. Exactly. If anyone is employed by the RCMP to look at anything online, it's to see what Daniel is doing. Now, in terms of, you know, having someone to monitor social media, yes, there probably is someone who that is their specialty, but when things go quiet, then they're doing other roles as well. It's not like they're employing someone especially to do that either. But Daniel likes that idea of there being this whole team of people watching social media. And I think if he believes that, that probably explains a lot of the BS that he's coming out with. I think he's forgetting the capabilities of the RCMP, of the detectives. And I think in his mind, it's all blurring, and he thinks that convincing people online probably is going to convince detectives. Oh yeah, Daniel is so important in his own mind. He is a legend in his own lunchbox. I think that's for certain.
Only talk about that because now people are going to say, oh, there's probably somebody in our Facebook group that's, you know, RCMP or working for the RCMP, and there probably is, because I tell them to get into every group. I tell them to watch all these lives. And every time I talk in a live, I send it to them as well. I send the link to them. So I'm doing everything I can.
Daniel, why are you and Darren not talking any longer?
Well, I've seen a lot of stuff online with the way Darren talks and the way he talks about me. I mean, you can go back to Susan's live where he said that I would buy drugs and not feed the children. But I stopped talking to Darren even before that, because one time Darren came to the house and he confronted Mom. And I was in bed sleeping, so Mom told me about it afterwards.
So this is going back to the story where Durwood came out and said that he had gone to the property and said, hey, you know, wants to speak to Daniel, and Daniel was too scared to come out. And now Daniel's claiming he was asleep. Given that by the sounds of it, it was a bit of an altercation, I'd be surprised if Daniel did sleep through it. But His ego is so big that it walks into the room before him. Totally. Yeah. No question whatsoever that he would buy dope before feeding the children. Daniel has always been number one in that household. Especially considering he was the money earner. Yeah, Malaya was getting payments. But you can bet that as soon as money stopped coming in from Cody, that the priority wasn't let's cut back on buying things for Daniel. The priority would have been, okay, well, you can't go and buy new clothes for the children, or you're going to have to buy cheaper things for the children because Daniel wouldn't want to change his lifestyle because of less money coming in. Yeah, I will definitely keep talking about Maddie. Nobody could sleep through Janie going off. Because when you read between the lines, and I mean, Durwood's not that quiet either. Can you imagine it? Unless Daniel was completely off his face on rugs, but he claims that he hasn't touched them since before Lily and Jack went missing, which means he's really got no excuses for how he could have possibly slept through Darren and Janie having this big row out in the driveway. It's not believable. Neither Janie or Durwood are quiet. Yep, and you see that so often. He is a coward. You can even hear that when you listen to the way that he was with the turkey guy in comparison to in his various media interviews, in comparison with Sonny and Charmaine. It is that whole, hey, blokey thing. He had more respect for, like, Turkey Daniel than any of the females that he's interacted with, in my opinion. I have no doubt that he hid from Durwood. No doubt whatsoever. Yes. Janie's voice is like foghorn leghorn. I've missed something up here. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll back through. I've missed something, but I can't see it. Yeah, no, he doesn't respect women, and he thinks that he can control women. He thinks they are possessions, and he thinks that, well, his experience with partners has been coercive control. So he believes that he can control women. And he believes that's how it should be. He's demonstrated it so much over the past 12 months. It's quite disturbing, really.
But Darren came to the house and he said to Mom, "You're making me out to be a liar. You said that you heard someone the kids outside. And Mom said, I never said that. Darren, you made that up. And Darren got really mad at that. And I know Darren went online and he said that, that, that I was inside the house and I was scared of Darren or was hiding away from Darren when he was confronting Mom. That's not the case. I was sleeping. I didn't even.
Yep, we believe you, Daniel. That's not the case. Now, Belinda is convinced that Janie told her that she heard the children go, or she heard Malaya shush the children. I think we've heard Daniel say, or at least put it in messages somewhere, that Janie heard someone shush the children. But then suddenly they're turning around and accusing Darren of lying. Well, all I can think of here is that it no longer suits their narrative to include Malaya directly, because I think Daniel's getting into some amount of trouble for the accusations against Malaya. So him and Janie have had to back off and won't admit that they said it. So now they're blaming it on Durwood. No wonder he's getting pissed off at them. Just having a look at comments here. Yeah. The whole using first names in conversation and everything, it's a manipulation tactic. It's all it is. I'm going to just make you feel good about yourself by using your first name because it's me showing you that I'm respecting you. And they don't really. It's just to manipulate. Yeah. They were in cahoots, the three of them, Daniel, Durwood and Janie. At one point in time, they started converging their stories. And I think at some point in time, Daniel has found himself in a situation where he's gotten into trouble for these allegations against Malaya. Because what you note is that it's a real sudden stop where he's gone from trying to throw shade at Malaya to where he's backpedaling big time. And so for him and for Janie, for Durwood to continue with the agreed narrative, they don't like that. So now they have to basically put it all back on Durwood. And we know that Durwood does have a lot of fabricated stories. But the question with him is how much of it is his own imagination and how much is stuff that came up with stuff that came directly from Daniel and Janie. The stuff that's going on in terms of Daniel, Durwood, Janie, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they are still communicating. But I'm not sure. It's very confusing because Durwood's completely done a 180. Darren also tried to fix that story by saying it was Hayden and Patty let him go wake him up. Here's the thing, I don't trust any of them. So, especially Durwood, after he has come out with that wrench story, the toolbox story, he's shown us how easily he can flip a story. So, none of them can be trusted in terms of even coming back and saying about falling out between them. Because you are so right, we don't know that it's not just a way of trying to manipulate people to believe certain things. Just having a look back through. Oh yeah, look. Daniel never would have expected those charges to happen. Never in a million years. I think that took the wind out of his sails. And I think that has affected how he's approaching this case. As for Durwood, I think he's been hedging his bets from day one. And I think he's probably still playing different sides. I think one of the things with that toolbox thing that made me especially angry was the way that content creator decided to treat it like it was a big joke as well. And how she was basically joining with Durwood in mocking content creators who had called him out for what was an utterly disgusting story. Now, I have no doubt whatsoever that actually Durwood coming back out and saying that it was just a joke was backpedaling to get himself out of trouble. Because the thing is, if you go back through the early Durwood audio, there are discussions in terms of toolboxes and stuff like that. I just think that when Durwood came out with the toolbox story, he didn't expect it to blow up like it did. So then he had to backtrack, and the content creator that was doing it with him, I think she dealt with it in a bad way. You know, when I'm thinking about the Durwood scenario alongside the Durwood and Janie and Daniel scenario, I think that's something that I need to go back over and try and untangle a bit for myself. Because, like, when I'm trying to talk about it here, I'm having trouble figuring out what's going on with these morons. It was utterly disrespectful, the toolbox thing. It should never have happened. And it just shows how little Durwood cares about Lily and Jack. Because nobody who genuinely cared about Lily and Jack would be coming out with stories like that. It's so disrespectful, but it shows us exactly who he is. Daniel's been working so hard to convince people that he's innocent. The problem is, him and Janie keep leaking things that prove that they're not. Over and over and over again. Because they're trying so hard to convince people that they had nothing to do with it. But they just cannot achieve that. Oh, yeah, he does. How many times has he said things like, well, this should all be over by now? And the dogs, you know, he was glad that they had brought the dogs out, the cadaver dogs out, because maybe that would slow down the online speculation. Meaning, he was hoping, just like when he leaked about the polygraph exams, he was no doubt really PO'd when he came out and told people that he'd done a polygraph exam and that he passed. And content creators turned around and went, hold the bus, that means nothing. Because he was so confident that that would be the thing that would stop people looking at him. Same with the dogs. When they brought the dogs in, and he was saying to Angela, I think it was, he was talking to. I think it was Angela, when he was doing the interview with Angela. And he's like, I'm 100% certain the dogs won't find anything. And he was certain of that. And afterwards he's saying, well, or even maybe in that interview, he was confident that the dogs were going to come in, the dogs were going to find nothing. He was going to report that to the public, and people would go, okay, whatever, let's forget about it now. But people are not going to stop talking about it, because at the end of the day, this is 2 little children who are missing. It's about a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old who've completely vanished. And the thing is, a lot of us who are covering this case have covered or followed many, many other cases. We see through the BS. We understand the ins and outs with bringing the dogs in. We understand the ins and outs of polygraph exams. And we're not going to be fooled by Daniel's BS. Yeah, some of those ridiculous channels that are out there, you know, making up stories to promote their own goals. Anyway, I'm not going to go down there, but that's the thing. When they do the polygraph exam, there's a lengthy interview beforehand, and that interview is put on video as well. From that, they establish baseline behaviours in terms of how to tell when the person's lying, when they're telling the truth. They coach them beforehand with the questions they're going to ask them. And then they go through the questions. And then they go through and they analyse the whole thing. It's a lengthy process. They're not going to tell them straight afterwards, yeah, you passed. Now, when Daniel said that they said you did good, maybe they said that in terms of reassurance. But that's not a you passed. Yes, Daniel's playing whack-a-mole with media. It must have been so frustrating for him over these last 12 months, all these times, to be able to essentially say, I passed the polygraph exam, and think people are going to go, okay, cool, yep, no worries, we're not going to look at you anymore. And to suddenly realise that it makes no difference. It must have been so frustrating for him. I have no doubt whatsoever that he was on drugs for some of those interviews. No doubt whatsoever. Yeah, exactly. You did good in taking the test. You got through it. Because their analysts would see through all this BS from Daniel. They're not going to believe his BS. Yeah, exactly. A good one to watch is the Chris Watts. It's quite lengthy, but the Chris Watts polygraph, where you see them, they do the interview with him, then they sit down and they go through the questions and he answers them, and then they hook him up and go from there. It's not what Daniel is trying to portray. Let's just put it that way. Because there's so much more to it. That's a good point. Someone who is innocent is not going to ask if they passed. They're also not going to need to make a big deal of it in public. See, the thing is, he's constantly coming out to defend himself, constantly coming out to tell people he's innocent, when none of that energy is being put into pleading for Lily and Jack. All his energy is being put into essentially defending Daniel. It's so obvious. He is a numbskull. He doesn't realise that every time he opens his mouth, he makes himself look more guilty. Exactly. You wouldn't need to ask, because you would be confident that you passed. Because you would know you were being truthful. Oh, that one, yeah. There's no criminal involvement. Yep, sure, no criminal involvement, Daniel. And yet, when you look at the paperwork, that's not there. Yeah, the thing is, with him trying to put these fires out, part of the reason they do keep doubling is because of the way he keeps trying to put the fires out. Because he just makes himself look more guilty. Oh yeah, Jen Soto and Malaya, they do have a lot in common. I think Jen Soto could give Malaya so many tips. Sorry, mega yawn there. Same with his bloods, made a point of ticking the non-existent, non-criminal box. Yep, and he was relieved. That's a good question. I would like to know what Jen Soto is up to these days. Someone posted a photo in the Maddie Soto Facebook group where it looked like she was somewhere getting her nails done, and it did look like it was Jen. It wouldn't surprise me if Jen has got herself another boyfriend. I just pray that she never, ever, ever has another child. Because she'll never be a suitable parent. Yeah. I think you're right. Because they have other ways of getting the DNA. Oh my gosh, I can't stop yawning. I was so exhausted yesterday that I finished my live stream early and I ended up just crashing out. And yet I'm still yawning today. I can't, don't know. Yeah, see, I think if they were going to take DNA, you would expect they would do the normal cheek swab thing. I think the blood test was for the other stuff for his case that's coming up. Yeah, it's definitely the cold weather. I have to admit, I'm sitting here with a blanket wrapped around me at the moment because it hasn't warmed up this morning. So that's probably not helping the situation at all. I'm getting up really late of a morning at the moment because it's so cold. Blood gives better DNA profile than saliva. True. Yes, only a conviction can put him on the SA list. But if you remember, the first appearance that he had, there were 2 times back to back. And the first time that it had was basically for him to give like DNA samples or something like that. I do have heat, but I've got no insulation. So especially in this corner here where I've got my desk, there's nothing under the floor. So when I'm sitting here, there's cold air coming up through the floorboards. And of course, any heat is just going straight up through the ceiling. So even though, I've got a heater going behind me and I've got ducted gas heating, it's freaking cold. No insulation whatsoever. That's why it gets so awful here in winter as well. Because, in summer, because the heat it doesn't stop the heat. So, yeah, that's why I kind of really want to try and move later on this year. Well, again, it's not cold by Canadian standards. I couldn't tell you straight up what the temperature is right now, but it's probably, I think it was probably about 7 or 8 degrees when I got up this morning. So, the inside temperature is probably like, early to mid-teens at the moment. Use a rolled up towel or rug to block the cold air. Yeah, I have like a thing under the back door that's got like rollers either side, foam rollers either side to block the cold air. But this house is like 100 years old. It's got gaps everywhere. So, you know, you feel the cold air coming in through the windows. They're not double glazed or anything. There's gaps in the floorboards, so you feel the cold air coming through there. And then, of course, the heating just goes straight up and out through the ceiling because there's no insulation to keep it in. I mean, I've got that film on the glass in various areas. My front door is one of those old-fashioned ones where it's just all glass panels down the front door, and I put film over the glass, and I've actually got a blind that I roll down to try and keep it warm. But just, you know, the house is like a leaky sieve in terms of it would be impossible to stop all the drafts. There's a draft that comes out from out in the back area that I don't even know where it comes from. If it's coming up through floorboards, coat your windows with bubble wrap. It's not as silly as it sounds, though. Yeah, I put straw around my house too. We couldn't do that here because of the heat. If we put straw around our house, in summer, that would make it a major fire hazard. But also in Australia, because we are so close, wherever we live, we're close to the bush. So putting straw around your house here is going to attract rodents and snakes and stuff. Yeah, I've got mats on the floor all around, and I've got a mat under my desk here, but it still seems to just, the cold air seems to come through. Yes, fuel is very, very expensive in Australia. It is inefficient. Because I rent, there didn't used to be regulations in terms of energy efficiency for rentals. And that's one of the reasons why I want to move, because they've brought in new regulations so that when I move, the place I move into has to be energy efficient. Meaning it can't be this icebox that this house is, where the heating just goes out through the ceiling, or where you can't keep the heat out in summer, because there's like all these new regulations in place, which is, you know, one of the reasons why I really want to move before summer, because I want to get into somewhere that has like a split system, proper aircon, so that when we get this summer that they're promising us, where it's going to be like non-stop temperatures over 40 degrees, we're not going to cook. You live in a drafty Hannibode house in winter. I wear a thick fuzzy onesie when home, only one heater in the place. Yeah, I find onesies too bulky for me, hence the reason I prefer to like wrap in a blanket or something like that. But yeah, this is a very drafty, very cold old house. Yeah. The problem with, you know, this house is that some of it, a lot of it is open plan. So even just, I shut off the rooms that I'm not using, but in terms of through the day when I'm like working on my computer and stuff, I'm still trying to heat a large area because I can't close it off. My portable air conditioner costs $5 a day to run. That's cold air. It will cost more than rent. Wow, I haven't looked at what I was paying through summer for my portable aircon, but that's the big thing in terms of I know that I'm going to save a bucket load of money when I do finally manage to move, because the amount of money that I spend on gas and electricity is insane. And, I have to run a heater. When you looking at the costs and everything, they're like, well, you can always turn it down a little bit and, try and cut costs and stuff like that. But I've got chihuahuas. They feel the cold. So I've got to make sure that the house is warm enough for them. Mouse will wear his jumper for a little while, but then he pulls it off and then he gets cold. So I have to keep the house warm enough for them, regardless of whether or not I can cope with it. So yeah, I definitely do need to find somewhere that's more energy efficient, for the sake of all of us, especially yeah, you can put all the heat on, and if the house is leaky and poorly insulated, it really doesn't do much. Yeah, the aircon that is in this house, because they only have to have, under the old rules, which is what this house falls under, they only have to have heating and cooling in one room. The aircon in this house is one of those really, really old box ones that sits in the window and does nothing. It works for an hour and then it just starts pumping out warm air. And it's really, really loud, so you can't be in the same room as it. And they won't fix it. So hence the reason why I use a portable air conditioner now, which, it probably did cost a fortune. I didn't even look. Hate to think. But anyway, what can you do? Just kind of keep going. You pay £35 a week. I'm not sure what that equates to in Aussie dollars, but we would probably pay at least that in gas and electricity. Gas is really, really expensive here. They're slowly bringing in various rules and regulations in terms of building codes, in terms of regulations for rentals and stuff like that. But I think Australia is so far behind when it comes to that sort of thing. $15 to £8. Yeah, I'm not sure what the weekly cost would be for gas and electricity here, but it's certainly not cheap. But yeah, building codes, Aussie dollars is probably double pounds. Yeah, that's probably about right, actually. That's a lot of money to be spending on gas and stuff, that's for sure. Yeah, going back to Aussie building codes, I think now there are much stricter regulations in terms of for the last 20-something years, all properties are meant to be insulated and things like that. But the problem is you've got so many old houses around, like this one, that are 100 years old or more, that there's no regulations. And when it comes to rental properties, you have to be careful what you ask for in terms of repairs and stuff, because the general rule here is that if you ask for repairs, they're going to whack your rent up. I mean, now they just do it as a matter of course, but it always comes back on you if you ask for repairs or if you ask for improvements or things like that. So it does make it challenging. It really does. Just hide that comment. 80 watching and only 49 likes. Yes, please do hit the like, people. That's always a good thing. Did Daniel own a fishing boat or aluminium boat? I don't think he did, but I do believe Jordan does. And possibly, given that he's got other family members who like to fish, it's also possible that one of his uncles could. I would say he's got access to a fishing boat or an aluminium boat. Moved off-grid, buying a camper to live in all year round, not paying rent anymore. That sounds really good. It's something I would like to do, but probably not for quite some time. I kind of like, at the moment, just, being in one spot. But it certainly could be, a way to go, that's for sure.
Until Mom told me afterwards. And Mom said if he ever comes back on the property, call the cops. So that's really where everything with Darren really took a turn. But I always was a little suspicious of Darren. I'm not going to dive into anything on that, but
sure, you were always suspicious of Darren, Daniel. You were buddy. He's so full of it. Temporary, when I get this paid off, I can buy a home. That's my plan. It's a good plan. Definitely a good plan.
Darren comes across, he jumps around a lot with the accusations he makes and the stories that he produces. And like 1 minute he's saying the kids are on the reserve. The next minute he's saying, oh, the kids went down to the United States. And with Darren, we're like, where is it? Like, where did you get this information? Do you want to?
Calling the kettle black. He's saying that Darren is jumping around with all these stories. Well, half the stories that Darren is telling are the same stories that Daniel was telling. And Daniel has been jumping around with these same sorts of stories. Yeah, we have no proof that the children made it home on Thursday. I believe they did. But we've not had the way they talk about it with Cindy would have seen the children in that FaceTime call thing. Doesn't say that she did. I agree. I think Darren would have like just kind of snuck away into the background had he not been involved. But he has to keep coming and pushing, and I think his change of story seems to coincide with a realization that there's no way of convincing people that Daniel isn't involved anymore. So Durwood now has to basically cover his ass by making it sound that he wasn't doing all this with Daniel and Janie, which I 100% believe he was. Yeah. He agreed with Darren. They were putting out shared stories. It's ridiculous. It's like now they're like, oh, you know, he's lying. But when you look at them at the beginning, they were definitely working on this together. It's so obvious. So obvious. They could be at the bottom of a lake or a large swamp. I do think there's water involved, but I still think they're buried by water. But, I mean, at this point, we just don't know. I hope RCMP have got a better idea than we do.
Plus, where you got the information. Is it from a private investigator? Is it from people you talk to? You don't ever give any sources. And that's the problem I have. Whenever I learn anything, I take it straight to investigators. I give them the source. You shouldn't just be going online and saying all this, you know, rubbish or garbage. You should be citing your sources, where it came from. You don't have to give the exact name, but you can say.
You shouldn't be going online and just saying all this garbage, Daniel. Good one. Good one. Just seriously. He's bending over backwards to discredit Durwood here. But the problem is, he doesn't realise he's discrediting himself. Because everything he's saying here in terms of Durwood is everything he's been doing as well. That disturbs me. This idea of him saying his last memory of Jack was when he got him out of the car at 3:30, 4 o'clock. I have thoughts on that. But I will tackle that probably in a different video or a different live stream. But it is interesting, especially when it's only Jack that he refers to. That was in Sunny's live stream, wasn't it? I think what I might do after we finish with this this one with Charmaine, I might actually go through and pull out highlights from Sunny's and address some of the things like that in future live streams. Because there were some real doozies that he said there that I think need to be addressed. I don't think we've seen Adam Roy anywhere. I wouldn't know if he was at the vigil because I wouldn't know what he looked like. Yeah, so much happening on the driveway. So much.
Talk to this guy at this certain time, or this guy's a local, and I already gave the information to RCMP. But yeah, Darren, you know, it's a really up in the air thing, and I haven't talked to Darren in a long time. He's accused me of owing people, you know, drug debts, and you know, I sold the kids for drugs and all this other nonsense, right? I don't owe anyone money for drugs. I never did. So that's kind of like the backstory on Darren.
It's okay.
I do think that there's been a bit of mudslinging from Durwood of late with Daniel because he wants to separate himself from Daniel. So in terms of the accusations of him owing debts, yes, whether we know if that's truthful or not, well, who knows? Oh, I didn't know that Adam Roy had popped his head up somewhere. That's not a channel that I follow. So that's interesting. And if it is that channel, unless we're seeing his face and hearing his voice, I'd still question if that was actually him or if it was just, you know, someone trying to once again manipulate public perception because they're not exactly a credible source. Yeah, it feels here that now Daniel and Durwood have turned against each other, that we know both of them will lie for their own ends. So in terms of Durwood saying stuff about Daniel and vice versa now, I think anything like that should be taken with a grain of salt. Because now they're basically trying to tear each other down, in my opinion.
A lot of people are wondering about the drones because that's something that you told me months ago that you had drones, but it's not something that I really shared. And they're wondering, like, what do you mean the drones are flying around to protect you? Like, how does that equate to protecting you or protection for you, as opposed to monitoring your comings and goings?
Well,
I love this drone story. It's just insane. Does he really believe that they have drones flying over to protect him? Well, that's a good question, Bonza. Is it just what they want the public to think? Because at this point in time, we don't know what to believe. Yes, they could be at each other's throats and trying to discredit each other, or it could just be yet another strategy in a long line of strategies attempting to control public opinion. It's so frustrating. Like, how are we supposed to believe anyone? I keep trying to. Drones, yep. It is. It's a game for them. They're enjoying being able to manipulate people. It's a game for so many people. Just to try and manipulate people. And I think that's why there's so many people who are stepping away from the drama and the BS, because so many people just don't know what's going on with the case anymore. It's possible. It is possible. It could have been, yeah, they were probably sitting around. They were probably probably sitting there one morning before Daniel was going in for some sort of interview, and someone probably brought it up as a joke, and they probably thought, hey, let's tell him this and see how far it goes. It could well be, because you could imagine that the RCMP probably need to find some ways also to just, relax a bit and to find a bit of amusement over all this stuff with Daniel. It could just be Tint's drone. Well, that's the thing. I'll play this version, but I think in the version that he has with Sunny, it just goes to an extreme. He could just be tripping. He's probably seen Tint's drone over the property and just got it stuck in his head.
You can't put a precise time on my monitorings of coming and going. I do have that lined up with major crimes. They know when I go to my visits with my daughter. They know, like, when I have my court dates and everything like that. I tell them all that ahead of time because I don't really go out in the public eye. I was advised not to, just due to the death threats that I have. And the surveillance of the drones, see, there's two different types of drones.
Before he goes on about the two different types of drones, like, they're saying, oh, don't go out in public because you've got these death threats against you. Seriously? If there were serious death threats, the RCMP would get to the bottom of them and make arrests. So they're not going to tell him this. Again, he's trying to make it sound like he's super, super important. Anyway, I want to play this drone story to finish off with.
There's your normal recreational drone, which is, they just have their standard light on it. It would be white, sometimes orange, sometimes a little bit green. And those are your normal recreational drones, high quality ones. But then when you get into the RCMP drones, they sit in various locations, and you can tell they're well coordinated because the drone pilots have special courses to do so, right? So they sit above the road. The one will sit above usually the end of the driveway, and they have them sit up at Lansdowne Station Road, and they have one that sits over to the far right, and then one sits over to the far left, and then one straight in behind the house. So they're all coordinated, north, east, south, and west. They're all done in a certain way so they can capture every angle. And you can tell they're RCMP because they blink red, white, and blue. There's not people out there impersonating law enforcement, right? Because that's a crime. So you can tell.
You know how hard I'm trying right now not to just completely lose the plot and crack up? He's definitely tripping out. That's the thing. He is such an egotist. They will have trail cams in the area. They will have bugged the trailer. They don't need to put drones up in the air. And they certainly don't need, like, a whole bunch of drones strategically placed to watch the area. Like, seriously, does he even believe this? Does he ever go back and listen to some of the stuff that he says? Now, at the start of this particular discussion, she said to him, were you essentially off your face with the last live stream? And he's like, no, I don't touch rugs or alcohol or anything anymore. And then he comes out with this story. Oh dear. It's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
RCMP, and they have to maintain vigilance because anybody who drives by, they have to try to capture a license plate if they slow down or come into the driveway or anything like that. So
Have you ever asked them
it kind of covers the
about
drone
it?
stuff.
Oh, so the drones are there to get the license plates of anyone who comes onto the property. Because they're not looking at Daniel. They're just trying to protect him and trying to get plates of different people who might be connected to the case. Look, I honestly think that if there are rugs involved, then there could well be people putting pressure on Daniel to keep his mouth shut and to keep them out of it. But this idea of there being like drones everywhere watching the property to protect him and get plate numbers from any vehicles that go by, it's so hilarious. Like, does he truly believe himself? It's just insane. I think. Hang on, he hasn't quite finished. I was going to say, I think he's finished talking about the drones, but he hasn't quite.
Yeah, have you ever asked them about it though? I know I
Yes, I
asked you that
do.
privately, but
Yeah, I do ask them about it, and it's a gray area, right? So it's limited information I can say. They say, no, Daniel, we don't have drones on you. But did you ever see them during the day? And I say no, which is kind of a trick question for them, right? And so we can't see you don't see them during the day, only at night? I said, yeah. Oh, okay.
you said that you were banned from that.
Okay. So they only have the drones there at night time. Because, of course, they're going to put on extra staff at night just to put drones over the property at Gairloch Road to protect Daniel. He's just so delusional. This world of delusion that he lives in is something I've never seen on this level before. It is mind-blowing, utterly mind-blowing. And he actually sounds like he believes himself, which goes back to him claiming that he's not doing rugs anymore. But then these stories are so out there that they sound like someone who has to be still doing rugs. Yeah. Pull the other one, it plays Jingle Bells. Like, seriously. It's just, yeah, insane. Utterly insane. And I think on that note, we do need this song just to go with what Daniel was saying.
So tall know the cars are parked and watching me, they speed away when I step out the door. They take my pics and videos galore. Drones are buzzing high above my place, yet none appear online to show their face. No one sees my mom making the ground, just silent lights without a sound. It's like Christmas up in the sky, lights of every color shining bright. They flock to watch me every night, hoping for a glimpse or a fight. I run so fast they can't keep up. They chase me through the wasty flush. Every night it's all the same. Do they even know my name? It's like Christmas up in the sky, lights of every color shining bright. They thought to watch me every night, hoping for a glimpse or a fight. In my mind the drones are friends, red and white and blue they blend, watching out to keep me safe. But who's behind this endless chase? It's like Christmas in the sky, lights of every color burning bright. They flock to watch me every night, hoping for a glimpse of fight.
I thought that was a very appropriate time to play that. Women's Warrior, if you can email me some more information on that, that's interesting because I'd be curious to look into that. I have come across information about basically drones that are, in city areas that are controlled from within the station and stuff like that. So I've no doubt that they do use drones for monitoring areas, especially areas where there's a high, area of trading in rugs and stuff like that. But in terms of in terms of Pictou County though, Gairloch Road is this isolated area, so they can't send unmanned drones into an area that's that isolated. So the only way they could put drones over that property would be to actually have someone nearby that's operating the drones. Good to see you, Roggy. Well, Rogay or Roggy, welcome in. Maybe they do practice in Daniel's area. I can't see them having the finances to be putting drones over Gairloch Road to watch Daniel. Maybe there is some sort of surveillance going on, but in terms of having, what's he saying, 5 or 6 or 7 drones over the top of him every night, just supervising him, the resources don't exist for something like that. So I think he's just being completely delusional, in my opinion. I may be wrong, but it just sounds delusional. Monitored from Sydney, 8+ hours away. They had a sting here a few months back. Drone had a green light. Interesting. I do have to look into this. But that's the thing, you know, that they're not going to use them just to monitor someone who's basically staying at home, doing rugs and not doing anything else. So public safety, monitor a vast area for public safety, watch for human traffic and rugs, only one drone for a 10-mile radius. And see, that's in the populated areas. New South Wales has introduced eyes in the sky in rural areas. We have the police helicopter here. That actually I haven't heard that for a while, but we have a police helicopter that goes out quite a lot. But yeah, it's certainly something I need to look into a bit more. But who truly believes that the RCMP have got a fleet of drones over Gerlock Road watching Daniel? Put a 1 in the chat if you believe that. Put a 2 in the chat if you think that he's delusional. Oh, do please send me the write-up for Nova Scotia. It's just seems to be a delusional thing completely, that they're not going to waste resources putting a drone or putting multiple drones up over Gerlock Road. I think he needs to lay off the drugs, essentially. So delusional, so delusional. Anyway, I think that's a good place to stop. There's still a little bit of this conversation between him and Charmaine, and I'll tackle that again tomorrow. But I thought the drone spot was a good spot to stop. Yeah, exactly. They've got the whole province to watch. They're not going to be wasting resources just on Daniel, especially when there are far more efficient ways of monitoring what's going on with Daniel. They don't need drones. He's so delusional, so delusional. You got to wonder what goes on in his mind. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming in. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please do hit the like button on your way out. That does help get this out there into the algorithm. If you're listening on replay, please leave a comment, because that also helps get this out there into the algorithm. I will definitely be doing some regular live streams, just going back and talking about Maddie's case. And I will also probably be doing a few of my live streams are going to be on Mackenzie, I think. But I'm definitely going to stick with getting stuff out for Lily and Jack. I know it's not a huge topic of interest right now, but I want to keep getting their names out there, especially if you've got other people who are putting the wrong sort of information out there. The subject is leaving the trailer. He really does think he's important. Probably not, because I wouldn't have had drones in an area like that before the children went missing. But I do think when we hear that there were like 7,000 images from the search and several thousand videos from the search, I do think that they probably have mapped the movements of Daniel, Janie, probably Daniel's friends over those early couple of days to see where they went in the first couple of days of the search, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming in, people. I really appreciate you. And I'll catch you in the next one.